Welcome to Mr. Hutchings History, where the past comes alive. Let's dive into today's story.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Ready to dive into a pivotal moment in U.S. history?
Absolutely. Always up for a good deep dive.
Today we're tackling Brown v. Board of Education, a case that reverberates even today. You mentioned wanting to explore how legal battles can ignite massive social change, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's fascinating how a single case can be a catalyst for such profound shifts in society.
And Brown v. Board is like the ultimate example. Picture this. It's 1954, racial segregation in schools is the law. It's just how things are. And then boom, this court case explodes onto the scene and changes everything.
It really sent shockwaves through the country. The impact was undeniable.
No kidding. So where do we even begin with a story this big? Well, I think it's best to start with a simple human story, right at the heart of it all. The story of Oliver Brown.
Okay, I see where you're going with this. Humanizing it always helps.
Exactly. So Oliver Brown, he's an African-American father living in Topeka, Kansas. And all he wants is for his daughter, Linda, to attend the nearby white elementary school. Seems like a no-brainer, right?
Yeah, I mean, closer to home, safer, less hassle. You would think that wouldn't be a controversial request.
Right. It's just common sense. But this seemingly simple request ignited a legal battle that would rock the nation and ultimately dismantle segregation in America.
It's amazing how these things snowball, you know?
Yeah.
A seemingly small act of defiance can have such far-reaching consequences.
It's a testament to the power of one person standing up for what's right. But to truly understand the magnitude of Brown v. Board, we got to rewind a bit, get that historical context.
Definitely, context is key.
So let's rewind all the way back to 1896. To a case called Plessy v. Ferguson. This is where the infamous separate but equal doctrine took root.
Ah, Plessy v. Ferguson, the case that basically gave legal cover to segregation for decades.
Exactly. Those two words, separate but equal, sound almost harmless, right? But they cast a long, dark shadow over America.
Absolutely. They were used to justify discrimination in every aspect of life. Schools, housing, transportation, you name it.
It was a way to maintain a racial hierarchy, plain and simple. And the NAACP, they knew that Plessy v. Ferguson was the cornerstone of Jim Crow laws.
Yeah.
They saw Brown v. Board as their chance to strike at the very heart of that system.
It was a bold strategy. Instead of just challenging the unequal conditions in black and white schools, which was the usual tactic at the time, they went for something much bigger.
They went for the whole enchilada. They said separate is inherently unequal. They brought in Thurgood Marshall, this legal powerhouse, who would later become the first black Supreme Court justice, to argue the case.
Marshall was brilliant. He understood that this case had the potential to redefine the very fabric of American society.
And he nailed it. Their argument wasn't just about equal facilities or textbooks. It was about the psychological damage inflicted on black children by being told they were inferior simply because of the color of their skin.
It was about the message segregation sent loud and clear that black children weren't worthy, that they weren't deserving of the same opportunities.
It's a gut punch just thinking about it. But here's the thing. Against all odds, the Supreme Court, led by Chief Justice Earl Warren, issued a unanimous decision.
Unanimous, that's huge, especially for such a controversial issue at the time.
Right. It was a watershed moment. And what's even more remarkable is that the court didn't just focus on the legal technicalities. They acknowledged the profound psychological harm of segregation.
They went beyond the letter of the law and addressed the human cost of discrimination.
In Warren's words, they were powerful, man. He wrote about this feeling of inferiority that segregation instilled in black children, affecting their hearts and minds in ways that might never be undone.
Those words resonated deeply then, and they still resonate today.
For sure. But even with this landmark decision, even with the highest court in the land saying segregation is wrong, the road to desegregation was anything but easy. The court instructed states to desegregate with all deliberate speed, and that's where things get really messy.
Oh yeah, all deliberate speed. Those two words would become both a rallying cry and a source of immense frustration. It was a double-edged sword.
Right, because on one hand, it acknowledged the need for change, but on the other, that vague timeline opened the door for massive resistance, especially in the South.
It gave those determined to maintain the status quo a loophole, a way to delay and obstruct the implementation of Brown v. Board.
So instead of a swift and decisive dismantling of segregation, we got this fierce backlash, this desperate attempt to cling to the old ways.
And that resistance took many forms: legal challenges, political maneuvering, social intimidation. It was a tumultuous period in American history.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw figures like Judge Tom Brady of Mississippi, who became a symbol of defiance. He clung to the idea of states' rights, arguing that the federal government had no business meddling in their education system.
Brady and others like him, they invoked the Civil War, they threatened bloodshed and revolution if forced to integrate. It was a stark reminder of how deeply entrenched these racist beliefs were.
It's chilling to see how far people were willing to go to uphold a system built on inequality. And it wasn't just empty threats. Just a year after Brown v. Board in 1955, the nation was horrified by the brutal lynching of 14-year-old Emmett Till in Mississippi.
Emmett Till's murder, it was a stark reminder that racial hatred was alive and well. Accused of whistling at a white woman, he was brutally murdered, and to make matters worse, an all-white jury acquitted his killers.
It was a blatant miscarriage of justice and a tragic illustration of the real-world consequences of resisting integration.
It showed just how far some people were willing to go to maintain the racial hierarchy, even if it meant resorting to violence and terror.
It's a horrifying reminder that this wasn't just about desks and blackboards, was it? This was about something much deeper, much more insidious.
You hit the nail on the head. James T. Patterson, a renowned historian who's written extensively about Brown v. Board, argues that school segregation was never truly about education.
It's almost like they saw education as a threat.
Right. Exactly. It was about power, plain and simple. By keeping Black Americans from getting a quality education, they could limit their opportunities, their upward mobility, their very voice in society.
It was about preserving a system that benefited one group at the expense of another. We saw this play out in the reaction to Brown v. Board, too, right? This thing they called massive resistance.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about coordinated efforts to defy the Supreme Court's ruling. Think state legislatures passing laws to get around the ruling, even shutting down public schools altogether.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it? To think that some people were so dead set against integration that they'd rather dismantle their entire public education system.
It really shows how deeply ingrained these power structures and racist attitudes were. And, this is where I think historian David J. Garrow's work is so insightful. He argues that legal victories, while essential, aren't enough on their own.
So it's not enough to just win in court. You need something more to make real change happen.
Exactly. You need what Garrow calls grassroots activism, that constant pressure from ordinary people demanding change. And that's where a story like the Little Rock Nine becomes so powerful.
9 incredibly brave Black students, just kids really, who dared to integrate Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas, back in 1957. It's an incredible story.
It really embodies that idea that change needs more than just laws on paper. You need courageous individuals willing to put themselves on the line.
Just imagine being their age, facing down those angry mobs, knowing that the entire nation was watching your every move.
It's awe-inspiring, the courage those students displayed. And there wasn't just mobs they had to contend with. Remember Governor Orval Faubus?
Oh man, how could we forget? The governor of Arkansas calling in the National Guard to block those kids from entering the school. That image is burned into my memory.
It was a blatant attempt to defy the Supreme Court, and in the end, it took President Eisenhower sending in federal troops, the 101st Airborne no less, to escort those 9 students into the school.
Those images of the Little Rock Nine, surrounded by soldiers just trying to get an education, they're iconic, It really drives home the point that this was a battle fought on so many fronts.
Absolutely. And it's a reminder that while we often focus on the dramatic confrontations, the outright acts of hate, there were also acts of courage and compassion happening behind the scenes.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. So it wasn't all doom and gloom.
Not at all. At Central High, for example, some white students and teachers welcomed the Little Rock Nine, even risked their own safety to protect them.
That's incredible. It's a good reminder that even in the darkest of times, there are always glimmers of hope, individuals who stand up for what's right, even when it's hard.
Exactly. It's a testament to the human spirit, the capacity for empathy and change, even within a system built on division.
It's powerful stuff. And this fight, this yearning for equality, it wasn't confined to courtrooms and schoolyards, right, Brown v. Board. It had this ripple effect, this energy that spread far and wide.
Oh, absolutely. It's impossible to overstate the impact Brown v. Board had on the civil rights movement as a whole. Think about it. Here you had the highest court in the land declaring segregation unconstitutional.
It was a massive victory, a powerful symbol of hope.
Exactly. It energized activists. It gave them a legal foundation to challenge other forms of Jim Crow, whether it was segregated buses, lunch counters, you name it.
It's amazing to think about how one court case could have such a profound impact on the fight for civil rights in America.
And that's what's so crucial to remember. Brown v. Board wasn't just about integrating schools. It was about dismantling an entire system built on racial hierarchy and inequality.
It's like Brown v. Board created this ripple effect of social change, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty inspiring when you think about it.
It really is. And it reminds me of that famous quote, you know, the one, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice."
Oh, yeah, I think it's often attributed to Dr. King, right?
Right, exactly. But it's important to remember that it doesn't bend on its own. It takes work.
So true. It takes courage, dedication, a real understanding of the past and how it shapes the present.
Exactly. And that's what Brown v. Board teaches us. It's a reminder that achieving equality, it's not some passive process, you know? It takes constant vigilance.
It's an ongoing struggle.
Yes. It's about being willing to challenge injustice wherever we see it, whenever we see it.
It's about being like Oliver Brown, willing to take a stand even when it's hard, even when it seems impossible.
Absolutely. His courage, the courage of those 9 students in Little Rock, it should inspire us all. Because let's be honest, the fight for equal education, it's far from over.
Yeah, sadly, that's true. We still see so much inequality in our education system today.
We do. Disparities in resources, opportunities, outcomes. It's a reminder that Brown v. Board, as monumental as it wasn't the finish line, more like the starting pistol for a race that's still being run today.
And a race that we all have a part in running, right?
Absolutely. Each generation has to pick up the baton, keep pushing for progress, keep fighting for a system where every child, regardless of their race or background, has a chance to thrive.
Beautifully said. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive into Brown v. Board, I have to admit, I'm feeling a lot of things. There's this sense of awe for the bravery of those who fought so hard for justice, admiration for the legal minds that made it happen, and a renewed sense of responsibility to carry on their legacy.
I feel it too. It's a legacy that belongs to all of us.
It really is. So, to our listeners, we leave you with this. What will you do in your own corner of the world to dismantle the remnants of segregation and inequality? How will you contribute to the ongoing fight for a more just and equitable society? It's a question worth pondering, a question worth discussing, and most importantly, a question worth acting on. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep pushing for a better future.
Thanks for listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.